In 1998, Rob Bilott was having a normal day in Taftlaw, Ohio, when two men walked through the organization's doors with the information that would change not only his, but many people's lives. He was brought out of his meeting when the men insisted on meeting him. Without much introduction, the man started talking about the landfill, which was supposed to have chemical-free trash, but he handed video proofs about how that's all a lie. Upon Rob's refusal to follow through, the guy introduced himself as Wilbur Tennant, a neighbor of Rob's grandma, Elma White. Not able to settle with the thought, Rob visits his grandma the next day, who tells him that Tennant has the farm where he played as a kid. Rob then visits Wilbur, who shows him the black teeth, huge bladder, deformed hoofs, and tumor in flesh, all belonging to the cows he once owned. He then shows Rob the water having stones turned bleach, showing how they are exposed to chemicals in the water. Wilbur explains how the cows raised by him started getting mad and charging at him, which made him take down 190 cows. Wilbur's brother Jim used to work for DuPont, but when he got sick, the company offered to buy his land to deposit trash, but promised that it would have no chemicals. Wilbur had gone to the company, the feds, the state, and everywhere, and the EPA even visited the place but didn't bother sharing the report with him. When Rob met Phil Donnelly, the owner of DuPont, at an event, he asked him about Wilbur Tennant and how his cows have been getting sick, presumably at the expense of DuPont's landfill. Upon knowing the name of the landfill, Dry Run, Phil recalls having sent the EPA to get a report on it and agreeing to send the report to Rob. Seeing the report did quite the opposite of settling the tenant's nerves, since it blamed him. Tennant starts lashing out at Rob for not taking this seriously, which might have been true to some extent, until Rob himself saw a cow charge at Tennant, forcing him to kill a cattle that he raised as his own. Getting back, Rob watched all the videotapes handed by Tennant, showing the visibility of poor health and sicknesses in all the cows that died. By convincing Tom, Taft's CEO, Rob decided to file a claim and find out what's in the landfill, which is kind of a contradiction to the fact that DuPont is almost partners with Taft. By manipulating Tom that they should sue DuPont rather than the EPA, he manages to sue DuPont, yet not have it become a big issue. Phil claims that this is a minor issue and tells Rob that he will send any reports about hazardous wastes at the Dry Run. It takes a year for Rob to finally receive the reports that he asked for, and he seems to be finding very questionable details in it. But one of the most concerning parts is the mention of a chemical PFOA in the reports, an acronym that he can't seem to find anywhere in the name of listed chemicals. A conversation with Phil exposes him to the possibility that something that even the EPA doesn't know as hazardous is being dumped there, with a straightforward mention of everyone knowing more than the EPA. Or they wouldn't let firms regulate themselves. Kim had been mentioning a discovery of something that no one knew was hazardous, but Rob seems to be thinking that DuPont has been well aware of producing hazardous chemicals and didn't report it to the EPA intentionally. After this, Rob keeps trying to reach Phil, but the excuse of Phil traveling doesn't get them to reach each other. His mistake of approaching Phil for a business-related conversation at an event makes everyone, including his wife Sarah, mad at him. But at this point, Rob has become convinced to sue DuPont. Upon court's order, Phil sends Rob the discoveries of the company, but the probable reason Phil did it without resistance is the amount of papers and documentation that were sent to Rob. The number of boxes is enough to make a man back off, but only if Rob was like that. Rob didn't hesitate for much longer before getting into analyzing all the documentation. After scrolling through numerous pieces of documentation, Rob finally came across the term C8 as an alternative to PFOA. This makes him approach one of the chemists Tom knew, who tells him that he knows about PFOS, which is a man-made long chain of fluorocarbons. The long chain of carbons can be linked to the term C8, so the next question Rob asks the chemist is what'd happen if someone drank it, but the guy laughs it away that one shouldn't. Thinking about the term fluoride and how it might affect teeth, Rob calls the chemist again on one random day, demanding what would happen to one's teeth if they drank it. The answer that the teeth might stain enough to turn black shakes Rob to the core, since he is now sure that not only the animals, but also the people of West Virginia have been drinking the chemical. This surety was linked to the incident when there was a young girl with black teeth when he first visited West Virginia regarding this case. On one hand, Rob is very near to discovering the truth about the situation, while on the other hand, a sick tenant's house is broken into while his family seems to be receiving silent threats. Sarah wakes up late at night and finds the house messed up, making her fear that someone broke in, only for it to be Rob's doing. This gets her to lash out at him when he starts acting crazy by mentioning how they are being poisoned by DuPont. Rob makes her calm down a little and listen to him in detail, and he'll stop if she still isn't convinced. The messed up story started with the discovery of a water-repelling element that was first used on tanks on battlefields, but companies, one of which included DuPont, decided to bring it to homes, not on tanks, but on pans. The material is known as Teflon these days. Something that has become a normal presence in every household is not as much of an ease as it has been portrayed as. It is not like the issues were discovered later on. Right from the start, the workers who made Teflon were coming down with fevers and nausea, which made DuPont lace cigarettes with them and had the workers try it. The result was the workers reaching hospitals, and this happened in 1962, 1 year after the launch of Teflon. DuPont had been well aware of the hazards in a year, yet decided to simply launch the smoke in the air. The sludge was tossed in Ohio or packed into drums and thrown out. However, since the drums were washing out, they decided to create ditches and deposit thousands of tons of toxic C8 sludge in them. While a company, 3M, killed monkeys while testing C8 on them, DuPont tested it on rats. The rats contracted different diseases, their organs ballooned, they got cancer, or the pregnant ones gave birth to deformed babies. This was a test on rats, but ironically, the workers in the company were also simultaneously becoming test subjects without any realization. One of the women working in DuPont was pregnant at that time and gave birth to a baby with a deformed eye and one nostril. DuPont had smoothly covered tracks to let the workers or the people know of the hazards, which led to the present day where the cancer-causing C8 has been present in paints, raincoats, carpets, boots, and whatnot. After telling all the necessary people and confronting Phil, Rob goes to Tennant, telling him they bought Jim's land and deposited around 14 million pounds of C8 sludge in the land near his house. Tennant wants the guys to be behind bars, but Rob tries to explain that they can only cover the damages, since all the chemists and scientists who can prove that are already working on these companies. He tries to tell Tennant that the companies have all the money to fight it, only to be accused of just wanting a prize out of supporting him. Rob walks off telling him to talk to his family about it, but Tennant mentions his family feeding on the same surroundings too. Rob tells him to leave the place and get somewhere less toxic, only to get the heart-shattering news that Wilbur and his wife have already got cancer. Rob breaks down about the entire scenario when he gets home. Sarah tells him to use whatever he knows about DuPont to catch them off guard and bring them down. So Rob decided to spread around the internal documents of the company to different agencies once the monetary settlement between Phil and Tennant was covered. A letter to Joe and Darlene Kiger sparks new information for Rob when they approach him in 2001, telling him about the water department sending a letter mentioning how the levels of C8 in the wells found in the town have been termed safe for people. Darlene reveals how her former husband was a chemist at DuPont, earning well, but died of what they called Teflon flu. The couple then mentions a few more DuPont workers dying of ulcerative colitis, thyroid, testicular cancer, and kidney cancer, while Darlene herself had to get a hysterectomy and couldn't conceive anymore. Frustrated at this, Rob decides to bring his entire team into defeating DuPont by trying to prove that the safe levels of C8 they suggested in waters have been long surpassed, and they should move towards medical monitoring. The team is only convinced by Tom's support of Rob. In 2002, DuPont in the court claimed that 150 parts per million of C8 in water is safe to drink, which has been a pre-planned violation of numbers between DuPont and the agency working on the C8. In 2004, Rob visited DuPont and met the workers to record some details for the court hearing. The details and the testing he narrates, carried, and written in the documentation of DuPont were never revealed to the people working there for years. The results of the case in 2004 had DuPont pay $16.5 million to the EPA for not reporting the hazards of C8. DuPont then gave $235 million for medical monitoring of the people at risk and the right to sue DuPont if the people contract a disease. The next job for Rob is to get people to have their blood samples given, so the team decides to pay the check to the people after they have given their samples. By Christmas 2005, almost 69,000 people have given their blood samples, giving them enough data for authentic testing. Wilbur Tennant left the world in 2007, not seeing the results of what he initiated. A stranger confronts Rob about his brother dying of testicular cancer, but the results of the tests are still not being out. This gets Rob on edge again, where he keeps asking around for results or some analysis that he can give to the people, so neither his family nor the Kiger family is harassed and targeted anymore. His marriage and family life have come to a stake since all his attention has been going to the case since it started. No one notices how Rob's arm shaking has been getting more serious whenever he gets tense. So in 2011, when Tom once again mentions a drop in his pay, Rob gets a transient ischemic attack due to all the stress and pressure. This has Sarah confront Tom to stop making Rob feel like a failure when he has done this much up until now. In 2012, Rob finally received the 7-year due call from the science panel. The panel had scientifically proved the link of C8 to 6 categories of serious illnesses, including kidney cancer, testicular cancer, thyroid disease, preeclampsia, high cholesterol, and ulcerative colitis. However, what seemed like a closure was still an ongoing battle for Rob, since DuPont rejected the science panel and the agreement and is reneging. Rob's giving up at the time would have meant that there was no use fighting the system and the situation anymore. But lucky for everyone, he didn't. He was found in the court cases in 2015 as well, and kept winning jury awards for these cases in the following years. DuPont finally settled the 3,535 cases for $670.7 million. PFOA is known to be present in the blood of 99% of humans all around the world, and it is the result of his works that efforts to ban PFOA and other unregulated chemicals are being done throughout. More than 20 years after Wilbur walked up to Rob, he is still fighting for the case.